Oak Island, a privately owned island off the south shore of Nova Scotia, Canada, has been a mysterious place of intrigue and speculation for years. Countless theories about alleged buried treasure or other historical artifacts concealed on the island have been tied to this 57-hectare island, which sits 200 meters from the mainland. It received increased fame when the History Channel put out their popular, albeit highly dramatized, reality series The Curse of Oak Island in 2014. The show is now on its 9th season, which premiered November 2nd, 2021. Join Factsverse as we tackle several theories that attempt to shed light on the mystery that has enshrouded the island. The Captain Kidd Theory, Shiver Me Timbers. This plausible theory, which was featured in the very first episode of history's The Curse of Oak Island, maintains the legendary Captain Kidd buried his stash of treasure on the island and then cursed it before setting up booby traps to ensnare future seekers of the hoarded wealth. The theory was further explored in the Season 4 episode All That Glitters. The Shakespeare Theory, Will's Lost Works. A man named Peter Amundsen, who's a Freemason, claims William Shakespeare wrote a cryptic map that points towards Nova Scotia, which happens to be where Oak Island is in case you weren't paying attention. The Curse of Oak Island's Lagina brothers spoke with Amundsen in the Season 1 episode The Secret of Solomon's Temple. According to him, Shakespeare included seemingly random clues throughout his many works by capitalizing letters, intentionally misspelling words, and using out-of-order page numbers as a way of giving would-be treasure hunters a trail of breadcrumbs that would lead them to the treasure. Amundsen further claims the trove contains not only precious metals like gold and silver, as well as priceless gemstones, but also some lost Shakespearean manuscripts. The Sir Francis Drake Theory, Wealth Beyond Measure. Historian Paul Speed speculated in the Season 5 episode The Lot Thickens that an otherwise mundane piece of leather that he insisted was for bookbinding was somehow connected to the 16th century privateer Sir Francis Drake, who was infamous for plundering hundreds of millions of dollars worth of riches from a Spanish galleon. Speed further suggested Drake himself was actually buried somewhere on the island, stating that whenever the crew of treasure hunters hits metal, they just might have found his casket. The Marie Antoinette-FDR Theory, Off with Her Head. Marie Antoinette was the Queen of France, who famously was decapitated during the French Revolution. Then we have Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was the 32nd President of the United States. So what's the connection? In the Season 4 episode of The Curse of Oak Island, entitled Presidential Secrets, the team of treasure hunters met with a historian who discussed FDR's belief that the infamously lost crown jewels of France ended up somehow being buried on Oak Island. The theory further postulates Marie Antoinette's jewels were given to a servant who ran off with them and potentially took the precious gems all the way to the island. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like, and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already, and stick around to learn all about the theory that might be the final piece of the puzzle. The Dual Cipher Theory, Things Are Getting Cryptic. In the Season 2 episode The 90-Foot Stone, a cryptographer named Daniel Runstum met up with Rick and Marty. Runstum is convinced that a slab of rock found at a depth of 90 feet below the surface of the Earth holds a few clues pertaining to the treasure that conflicts with previously held beliefs about where it might be hidden. In 1949, a man named Reverend A.T. Kempton supposedly translated the stone by using a simple substitution cipher. According to Runstum, the stone reads, 40 feet below 2 million pounds are buried. But he also believes the cipher actually contains two messages, which include the English reading and a Spanish one as well. The second code, according to Runstum, reads, at 80 feet guide corn long narrow sea inlet drain, which he claims are cryptic instructions on how to thwart the booby traps that flood the money pit. The South Shore Theory, 6 Degrees of Francis Bacon. This theory holds the 16th century philosopher Sir Francis Bacon hid his wealth on the island and set booby traps above it to ward off future treasure hunters. The Curse of Oak Island Season 6 episode The Paper Chase saw the Lagina brothers meeting with an author named Randall Sullivan, who believes that one of Bacon's books, which was posthumously published, makes reference to seas, water shafts, and pits, all of which bear striking similarities to the booby traps in the so-called money pit. The Money Pit False Lead Theory, It's All a Distraction. In the Season 3 episode Swordplay, the brothers met with Mike and Sean Harold. two engineers who based their theory on research of one of their distant relatives who supposedly explored the island ages ago. They believed the money pit was a red herring, a false lead to deter treasure seekers from finding the true site of the buried treasure. The brothers further believe the actual site of the trove is very close to the money pit. They say placement stones were used to mark the spot, but those stones have since been destroyed by earlier excavations. The star map theory, signs and symbols. Aerospace engineer Dr. Travis Taylor, who was the showrunner for the National Geographic Channel program Rocket City Rednecks, met up with the Curse of Oak Island team and explained his theory that by overlaying symbols tied to Freemasonry, as well as a map of the constellation Taurus, onto a map of Oak Island, it's revealed the treasure is actually hidden on the west side of the island. Despite his claim, expeditions to some of the locations suggested by Dr. Taylor yielded no results. The William Phips theory, the 17th century theory that might just solve the mystery. According to this theory, which is unique in the way that it actually is backed by hard evidence, the treasure is tied to King James II, who came into power in 1685. This Catholic king was despised by the English Protestant majority, including political leaders and members of the upper echelons of society. Since he was so unliked, a plot arose to overthrow him. One of the hated king's enemies made a journey to Holland when King James II came into power. He then convinced the Protestant King William III of the Netherlands to unite with the English to overthrow King James II. The only thing King William III needed to help make this happen was to provide money to fund the coup. Successful 17th century explorer William Phips, who was funded by the English aristocrats, had at one point found a Spanish shipwreck full of treasure. He and his mates recovered about $4 million worth of loot in that wreck. Once they made their way back to England, the Protestants who were plotting the overthrow of the king managed to convince Phips to return to the site of the wreckage with a crew from Holland to bring back more treasure to help fund the war. Phips had his own qualms with the king, who refused to let the colony of Massachusetts self-govern, even though he had showered King James II with vast stockpiles of treasure and gifts. So Phips agreed to go back and loot the ship for a second time. After they had fetched the treasure, they returned to the Netherlands with enough silver to successfully fund the toppling of King James in 1688. That's when Phips and his crew went to hide the remainder of the treasure on Oak Island. Once there, they dug the notorious money pit. According to legend, an underground cave gave way while they were digging, filling the pit with water and making the treasure irretrievable. Phips and his crew then sealed up the money pit and went to England to inform the British Crown of their serious problem. Clandestine operations were subsequently carried out to attempt to retrieve the treasure, but none were successful. By the 1750s, the Brits decided if they couldn't have the treasure, no one should. So they booby-trapped the island, constructing a series of shafts and flood tunnels that explorers today have since found. But no one to date has discovered the whereabouts of the hidden treasure, or if it ever really existed. Other modern-day discoveries appear to back up this theory further, however. For one, a 17th century pickaxe, which has been confirmed to be from England, was found. And then there was the finding of several pieces of wood discovered on the island, which all date back to the late 17th and early 18th centuries. In Season 5 of The Curse of Oak Island, 2 human bones were also discovered, both of which date back to the late 1600s to mid-1700s. And core samples taken from the island's swamp indicated that human activity must have taken place on the island somewhere between 1674 and 1700. Now it's time to hear from you. Which Oak Island theory do you subscribe to? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.